Well, this is the final week before the 2024 election. A lot has happened. We have covered a lot of it here on our channel, and we are going to continue to cover it all the way through. This is going to be the final episode I record up until we know who the president of the United States will be. So we're going to cover a lot of information. We're going to get through a lot of details, and we're going to look at Kamala Harris, Trump, Biden, everything that we've experienced over the past 4 years, and basically the closing arguments for the two candidates. So I'm excited. Let's dive in to all this content, and welcome to Principled Politics. And today we're going to cut through the commentary. Well, the Democrats are stressed. What I mean by that is that the Democrats are sweating over the fact that they chose Kamala Harris, who is a very incompetent person to run for president, a very unpopular person in many senses. She ran for president to be the nominee for the Democrats in 2020, failed miserably, and then became a DEI candidate for vice president. And now the Democrats have chosen her to be their presidential nominee. Now, the reason you could tell that they are stressing and that they are scrambling this last minute is a variety of things. A lot of other pundits have covered many of these topics, one of them being the fact that there is a heavy push towards censorship on YouTube and other platforms from such sources as the Washington Post. Ben Shapiro reported on this yesterday, with the Washington Post having a mission and a goal to censor all conservative platforms and conservative pundits and speakers on that topic. That's nothing new. Another thing on that note is that we can see here that basically the closing argument for the Democrats is the one thing that they have to rely on. And that is that all Trump supporters and Trump himself are the next Reich of the Nazis. We saw this all throughout this past week with the Madison Square Garden rally that Trump held and the accusation of everyone being there and the attendees being Nazis. Trump himself, throughout this whole election, it's nothing new for him to be called a Nazi or to be called the next coming of Hitler, but we can see that rhetoric being amped up this past week. So basically, we'll go work through this. We're going to look at a few clips. We're going to look at Kamala Harris's closing argument. One thing I did want to touch on here in the beginning is, a crucial mistake that I think Kamala Harris made that Trump didn't make, and that was with Joe Rogan. So Trump last week actually had the opportunity to sit down with Joe Rogan for 3 hours and to speak on a wide variety of topics, and Joe Rogan was very friendly towards him. And the interview, from what I could tell after watching the whole thing, I think it went pretty well. It had good appeal, and there was a lot of topics they covered that were friendly for Trump. And you could see Rogan kind of keeping it a very friendly interview, and I think it did Trump a lot of bonus points. I think it has over 36 million views at this point in time as we're speaking. Kamala Harris was allegedly supposed to go on to the Joe Rogan podcast. Well, she actually mentioned it before President Trump did, her campaign did, but President Trump hopped on the opportunity before she could. And Joe Rogan actually released a statement explaining, some details on why this podcast didn't take place. And it's very revealing in this last week of the election. So I'll read a bit of this article here from Fox News. It says, podcast giant Joe Rogan revealed his sit-down with Vice President Kamala Harris was scrapped due to demands from her campaign, although he left open the possibility that it could still happen if on his terms. So a few of the things that were being claimed from Joe Rogan is that, here's some of the terms, I guess I should say, that Harris's campaign demanded. So first and foremost, they offered to do it for Tuesday, this past Tuesday, but they told Joe Rogan that he would have to travel to her, and they could only do an hour. Now, of course, Joe Rogan didn't agree to this. He felt the best way to do it was in Austin in his studio. And the fact that Kamala Harris basically, denies this because, first off, she can't go to Joe, and Joe has to come to her, and he can only do an hour. And I'm sure there was other things there. She would have had some sort of pre-written thing. And I find it ironic because this really is telling of Kamala Harris's abilities. Now, Trump makes this point all the time. I'll make it here even. Kamala is this scripted, robotic human being. Even in her interviews where she doesn't have a prompter or anything like that, you could ask her a question about point A, and she will refer to point B, which is her scripted line that she's going to speak. Obviously, only so many humanoid robots can operate for 1 hour at a time. Kamala Harris, being one of those robots, thought 3 hours was maybe a little bit over the limit. Now Trump, he's a comedian, he's a guy, he has a personality, he could talk forever. I mean, him and Joe Rogan could have sat there till kingdom come and spoken about anything. Kamala Harris doesn't have that same ability. She's not witty, she's not intelligent, she doesn't have that ability to hold those human conversations, as being a lizard person herself, this robotic human that can't be able to talk with humans normally, and supposedly, they're not the weird people, her and Tim Walz, that is. Now, I think this was a huge mistake on her end. Yes, I think that it might have been a huge risk, but Joe Rogan is a very, very friendly interviewer. It has a wide appeal, and I think, Kamala Harris is struggling amongst men. There is a quiet uprising of men revolting against this pathetic soy boy move by them to have Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff be the face of manhood. But, this all just circles back to the idea that Kamala Harris isn't able to hold these off-script conversations. And so because of that, they weren't willing to take that risk. I mean, just look at all the many other opportunities where they tried to put Kamala Harris off-script and they just failed disastrously. So with that being said, that's the first point I want to make when it comes to everything going on with Kamala Harris, is the fact that she can't do these sit-down interviews. All the interviews she's done have been extremely friendly. And the fact that she thinks that this coming Tuesday, she's going to be able to win the election to be president without ever having done more than an hour conversation. I think that what Joe Rogan's platform does, and I think the format that he goes after, is something that not only Kamala Harris should have to done and Trump should have to do, but I believe that's what all presidents should have to do in general. All presidents should be put in a position where they have to explain themselves, elaborate, and be able to hold a conversation for at least more than 30 minutes. If you can't hold a conversation with Joe Rogan for 3 hours, then what makes us think that you're going to be able to be fit to run the country for 4 years? I desist. Moving on. I want to take a look here and play this clip for you guys. So this happened in DC. Kamala Harris had this sort of rally closing message of sorts. And the point needs to be made, and many other commentators have made this point, and I'll make it here, is that on policy, right, you take the person out of the policy, you take Trump out of his policy, you take Kamala out of her rambling and her policy, you're left with two very distinct images of the future of America, right? One is closing the borders. One is tougher on, all of our enemies, better foreign policy, peace through strength, a better economy, better gas prices, all those things that we could go on about. And on the other side, you have chaos, inflation, migration crisis, high crime rates, and the slaughtering of millions of babies until 9 months. However, what the Democrats are beginning to realize is that, a lot of people are starting to do just that. They're starting to take the person out of the policy. And that's been my message to everybody in my life, basically since I've been involved in talking about politics and trying to influence others to vote, is go based on the policies of the person, not the personality. And because of that, Kamala Harris has made a closing argument in Washington, D.C., near where January 6th happened, and that was kind of the visuals they were going for. And her closing argument to America on why they should vote for her as opposed to Trump is that They will literally die and be put in camps, Hitlerian style, if they don't vote for her and if Trump gets elected. That's right. Every single American is in jeopardy of being put in camps, according to Kamala Harris. So let's go ahead and take a look at what she had to say.
Donald Trump intends to use the United States military against American citizens who simply disagree with him. People he calls, quote, the enemy from within.
Well, there you have it. That was Kamala's closing argument to America on why she should be the candidate and Donald Trump is. All it is just fear-mongering, the Donald Trump syndrome that they're trying to push forward. Her final argument is that Trump is Hitler, all his followers are Nazis, and they're all going to round up all the liberals and everybody that disagrees with them and put them in camp. And this sort of, appeal to the masses that Trump is a Hitler fails to recognize that Trump literally was president before this. We have a track record of exactly what he's going to do. And last time I checked, through 2016 through 2020, I don't remember or recall anyone being put in camps. However, through the past 4 years, I do remember the Biden-Harris administration putting pro-lifers in jail, coming after their political opponents, trying to put Donald Trump in jail. That all seems very authoritarian to me, doesn't it? So this just goes to show you that they're struggling to grasp the victory. This is a last resort. It's kind of like that red button on the desk. It says, break glass and push button in case of emergency. This is that. I'm sure whatever internal polling they have, whatever data they have is showing that there is potential and a very high likelihood that Kamala could be facing a wipeout loss here. So this is their, last resort sort of rhetoric that they go after. And not only does Kamala Harris speaking this way, but we have former president in the sense of his brain, cognitive skills. We have the sitting president, Joe Biden, on live television calling half of America garbage. Let's take a look at that.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
Yep, that's exactly what Biden had to say. Just yesterday, he made this statement to CNN, and this is all in response to just some woke propaganda that Donald Trump and his supporters at Madison Square Garden were, talking about Puerto Ricans and calling them all these names and being racist, when people fail to forget that the joke that was made by a comedian whose job it is to do roast comedy. Yet, here they are calling half of the country garbage. So when the Republicans and when conservatives invite someone, I don't know why they invited him, but when they invite someone to make a joke, and it's clearly a joke from a comedian, that is deemed Nazi racism. But when Biden calls half of the country actual trash and garbage and seeks to dehumanize them, it's just another Tuesday. So this senile fool called half of the country garbage, but does this seem like a strategy for victory? Dehumanizing and degrading millions of people who maybe thought about voting for Trump and now they're being called trash and Nazis? There's something going on here, and I don't want to speculate too much, but we all have been aware of the fact that Joe Biden has definitely not been the happiest camper over the past couple months here since Kamala Harris swept him at his feet and took the nomination from him. So, there's been a lot of jokes going around on the social medias. Some with Biden giving Trump a tip of the hat and saying thank you. Maybe this is some sort of last-ditch effort by Biden to really just swing the vote towards Trump, because it seems so foolish and ignorant that it has to be deliberate almost. It has to be some sort of sabotage by Biden that he's trying to sway everybody in America to basically go towards Trump because of this rhetoric that they're having against Trump voters. Now, maybe that's just me being optimistic, but does this seem like a party of unity? Do Democrats really seem like they want to unify the country and to come together and sing Kumbaya and have this sort of, moving forward and turning the page, as Kamala Harris says? Well, let's ask Kamala Harris herself. Reporters got a hold of Kamala Harris after the statement came out, and they were able to ask her the question about, how do you feel towards people who feel offended by being called trash? And this was the vice president's answer.
Do you sympathise with any voters who do feel offended by or insulted by the garbage comments?
I am running for president of the United States. I will be traveling to 3 states today to do what I have been doing throughout, which is talking with the American people about the fact that, first of all, I get it in terms of the concerns they have about challenges like the price of groceries.
And the answer is no. That's a very clear answer that no, she does not sympathize with these voters. She could care less. And this just goes to show that Kamala Harris, once again, has been stapled to the pant leg of Joe Biden. Everything Joe Biden does should have a looming and lasting effect on Kamala Harris and what has been one of the most disastrous administrations in history. So Kamala Harris here just says, the question was, do you sympathize with people who feel offended by the comment of garbage? And Kamala Harris basically said, I'm running for president of the United States, and I'm going to be traveling to 3 different states to talk about people with their, disaffection with grocery prices. So once again, they paint this picture that Kamala Harris is, this new generational figure. She's turning the page away from Joe Biden. And even here, a simple question. She can't distance herself from her boss. So it's a very damning final nail in the coffin, I hope, as to why she should not be elected to be president. In fact, she should be put so far away from the presidency that she can never have a chance at it again. And that's my hope. My hope is that she loses and that she just fades into irrelevance. However, that may be optimistic of me, but that is my hope, because we can't have another era of Joe Biden policies. His policies are reckless. The spending was reckless. And if we have her in office again, all we're going to have is chaos, bumbling, rambling, and potentially more loss of life through the form of war, conflict, whatever it may be. So, in response to all this, what does Trump do? Well, Trump does the only thing that a reasonable person would do in this scenario. He gets a garbage truck and is a garbage man now. So, let's take a look at that.
Free beer out of the trash cans?
No, they would leave 6-pack or 12-pack for the guys.
That's a gift to the trash.
That's why they're all alcoholics.
Yeah.
So there's Trump driving around in his trash can. And then here was also Trump giving kind of a post-conference interview out of the garbage truck. So here's Trump doing that.
How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Real classy. He did a great job. Way to turn it around, flip it on their heads. And then here was him also at a rally in his garbage vest speaking to the crowd. So here was Trump doing that.
And I have to begin by saying 250 million Americans are not garbage.
And that's exactly how you want to do it. Trump does a great job here. He has a great response to this. Beautifully executed. And I'm very optimistic. And maybe I am a little too optimistic, but overshadowing my optimism is going to be our next segment that I want to segue to here. Even in the midst of all this stuff going on with Kamala Harris bumbling, rambling, failing to do interviews with Joe Rogan, failing to capitalize, and just continually Joe throwing her under the bus and her following him willingly, there is some funny business. So I want to show some of these things that are going on mainly in Pennsylvania, and they have been addressed through the legal system. But one thing that's happened recently is some sort of voter intimidation. So in Pennsylvania, there's been Democrats who've been paying operatives to go around wearing these lanyards that say voter protection. And these lanyards are giving the impression that they are government election officials, which they're not. And they've been going around intimidating people, trying to tell them that they're closed, trying to tell them, that there's other things that they need to do in order to vote. So, all of this, once again, is in response, and it seems like a form of panic on the side of the Democrats. So here's a picture that we could pull up. So if you can see here's one person with the badge, clipboard, and this lanyard that says voter protection, and it says Dems, but that has nothing to do with actual government officials or anything like that, as we begin to find out. And along with that, there's other examples of this that have been floating around. We'll take a look at a few of those. For example, we also have in Pennsylvania what seems to be intimidation and, some sort of intimidation by police officers in Pennsylvania. And so here's a video of a police officer threatening a person for wearing a MAGA hat and telling them that if they wear it to vote, that they will be fingerprinted and potentially arrested. Let's take a look at that.
What will happen if I do not take my hat off?
If you refuse, you're going to be arrested and taken to jail.
If I don't take my hat off?
You're going to be fingerprinted and processed. Actually, you're not going to be taken. You're not going to be taken to jail. You're going to be fingerprinted and released.
But I'll be arrested though.
Yes.
For wearing a hat that says "Make America Great Again."
That's correct.
It does not say Donald Trump on it anywhere.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for clarifying there, officer. He said that's correct multiple times. So we have masked police officers that are threatening voters for arrest for wearing red hats that say "Make America Great Again." Yet you have voters who have been permitted to wear Antifa apparel, BLM apparel, LGBTQ apparel, Palestinian apparel, all of those things in that sort. However, you're not allowed to wear a MAGA hat. That's 100% illegal. Also in Pennsylvania, and like I'm trying to make this point, I'm trying to drill it home that there is something going on here, some sort of, scary, funny business going on here with the Democrats, that they are worried. There's some sort of tension here. These are desperate people. And, I don't know whether it's some sort of intimidation, in the sense of that they're truly scared that they're going to lose the election, or that these people, on the ground, at least the people that we see in these videos that I'm going to be showing you, truly believe that Trump is Hitler. Now, we've seen this. Trump has had 2 confirmed assassination attempts, and however many other plots that we don't know haven't been carried out, thank God. But we know that when people have been pushed this narrative and spoon-fed by the media that Trump is Hitler, Trump is this authoritarian figure, it's no surprise that you have these Looney Tune Democrats and these people, these police officers who maybe have been brainwashed and are willing to do anything to stop Hitler. And so we're starting to see that, these people may be convinced that Hitler is this authoritarian figure and that his followers are Nazis. And so therefore, we have what seems to be, this intimidation and this trying to sway the vote so that, Kamala Harris can come in and she can be the savior and to prevent Hitler from entering office. Now looking here, next clip I'll show you is also in Pennsylvania. It says, if you wanted to know what a third world elections look like, here it is. We have cops shutting down lines because too many Republicans are voting. This is Pennsylvania. And they are putting lines and closing these voting offices early, and they're making a claim that it's due to not overpopulation, but the things being overran, or there's too many people at the voting booths. Let's take a look at one of those clips.
It's 2:41, and they are ending the line.
Of course, they send their most in shape and fit officers to go put that sign up. Seems like a real physically demanding job. Of course, I'm 100% being sarcastic. two chub monsters putting up a sign saying line ends here at 2:45 or 2:41 when, early voting office should be open way longer than that. Here's another video, also in Pennsylvania, with another police officer. Let's take a look at what happened in this case.
Why is it closed?
Let me explain it to you.
Please.
Okay. This process is very slow and grueling.
That doesn't matter if we're online.
Very slow and grueling.
Doesn't matter if we're online by 4:30. We have the right to
The reason why it
vote.
had to close was because a high volume of people wanted to do this. Slow and grueling.
Well, then they
So
have to
had
wait till everyone's.
They had to cut the line at 1:45.
They cut the line at 1:45.
1:45.
You hear that, everyone? They cut the line at 1:45.
Here's
This
the form
is
right here.
voter fraud, by the way.
No, it's
who are
not.
You? Yes, it is. Oh, voter protection. I heard about that on X. Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Contact
Voter protection. Let's see what that's
Contact
from.
the county commissioners to complain.
This is, and so you don't think this is voter fraud? This is voter fraud.
He said, "Let me explain it to you," and proceeds to give the least intelligible explanation I've ever heard. Slow and grueling, and there's a lot of people. So we're closing it at 1:45. Insane. Insanity. Well, thankfully, after all these complaints had been heard and everything had been going on, just today, a judge has actually ruled that Josh Shapiro has been breaking election law by using uniformed officers to break early voting lines. So here's the article detailing some of this. Judge extends in-person voting option in Pennsylvania after Trump lawsuit. The Trump campaign demanded extension of deadline in Bucks County after long lines outside election offices were cut off. And obviously, we saw some of those videos there of them being cut off. A lawsuit demanded extension of Tuesday's 5 p.m. deadline in Bucks County was filed on Wednesday morning after long queues outside the county's elections office on last day for applications led to security guards cutting off line and telling some of those waiting they would not be able to apply. Videos of the scene were widely circulated on social media, fueling rumors of voter suppression. The Trump campaign was joined by Republican National Committee and the Republican Senate candidate Dave McCormick in the lawsuit alleging the voters was waiting outside the election offices for mail ballots were turned away empty-handed in order to leave after the deadline expired at 5 p.m. on Tuesday. That is a direct violation of Pennsylvania's right to cast their ballot, and all voters have the right to stay in line, Trump campaign said. Judge Jeffrey Trouger said in a one-page order that Bucks County voters who want to apply for an early mail ballot now have until Friday, so it's been extended. Says the flood of late applicants overwhelmed electoral voters in Bucks County administration building in Doylestown, leading to long queue which cut off at about 2:45 p.m. Democrat election officials are seeing our numbers, they're seeing our turnout, and they're seeing us breaking early voting records across Pennsylvania, he said. And they are terrified. They want to stop our momentum, and we are not going to let them suppress our vote. That's Trump speaking. So the allegation was dismissed by Pennsylvania's Democratic Governor Josh Shapiro, who accused the former president of seeking to undermine public trust and integrity of election officials. Well, if you want to lead to, people questioning elections, maybe don't send the police out there to cut off lines and tell people that they're not allowed to vote. That's just for starters. So with all this being shown, all this in the forefront of our minds, like I said, there's something we got to keep in mind here, and it's something that I'm seeing. There's some sort of funny business going on here. I'm not claiming any sort of election fraud or any sort of, thing like that in 2020. I personally don't believe in those things. However, it is very clear to see in the tactics and strategies in which the Democrats are using, we can see clearly that there is some sort of scaredy cat worrying going on here by the Democrats, or else they wouldn't be doing these things. They wouldn't be trying to use these tactics or do whatever they want to do if they truly felt like they had a secure in-the-bag win. I mean, how could you feel like you have an in-the-bag victory when your nominee is literally Kamala Harris, who couldn't do a 3-hour sit-down with Joe Rogan? So with all those things in mind, I want to segue to our last part here on what we can expect, okay? We have covered Kamala Harris, her incompetencies, Joe Biden's incompetencies, and their dehumanization of many Americans, millions and millions of Americans, and their last-ditch effort to claim that Trump is a Hitlerian figure, which they've been doing forever. Orange Hitler and all his followers are Nazis. You know, if you want to talk about rhetoric that pushes us closer to the brink of division and civil war and unrest and all this violence and you know, potential mistrust in the government systems, how about calling half of American voters trash and trying to call half of them all Nazis and labeling them with these words and terms that also lead to the Republican nominee being shot in the head, you know, 3 times, and also almost being shot at another time, and a bunch of alleged assassination attempts. You know, that seems pretty divisive and dangerous to me when it comes to the future of America. However, the point needs to be made that what can we expect over the next week? What can we anticipate? And I want to go through those things. So I just wanted to summarize what we all talked about, and those are the main points. And the main point is that when you just look at the personality, of course, you may come to the different conclusions, and that's what the media wants you to do. They want you to look at Trump's rhetoric, look at the way he talks, his jokes, all these things, his brashness, and say, oh, well, if you're looking at that, then of course he's Hitler, he's this, he's this. But when you actually look at his policy, we have the fortunate ability to go back to 2016 and look at everything he did. Those are good things, and I believe most Americans want those things. When you look at the past 4 years, do you want more of that? Or do you want a different page to be turned, in the words of Kamala Harris? I want to go back to what we had under Trump, which is peace, stability, a healthy economy, and the ability to have thriving small businesses and families. None of that has taken place under Kamala Harris, nor will it in the future. So we'll segue here to our last section here, and I just wanted to take the time here to just do a real simple breakdown for some people who have never, studied much on what happens. You know, there's some people out there who just cast the vote, they watch on the TV, and you know the TV and the news do explain. They do explain, you know, what's going on in the sense of, you know, how it works and you know, the states and the Electoral College. But I wanted to take some time for us, you know, here at Principal Politics to take a look, and I can walk you guys through what we can anticipate over this next week and what will happen come Tuesday. So come Tuesday, November 5th, which is Super Tuesday, by that point, the general election will be held, and everybody, you know, who hasn't already voted will be able to vote on this day. And in 2024, on November 5th, we will be voting for all of our House of Representatives. We will be voting for 1/3 of the seats of Senate, and we will be voting for the President and the Vice President of the United States. So how the process works is all these votes will be tallied, they'll be counted, and what will take place is the Electoral College process. Now, what this process looks like, and you'll hear a lot of Democrats complain about it and have, you know, this, you know, problem with the democratic system that we have through the Electoral College. And the reason the Electoral College was put in place was so that smaller states could have a bigger voice, because the early founders were afraid of, you know, mob rule and this fear that, you know, the larger states would just overrun and overshadow the smaller states from having any sort of say in the formation of the government. So after Election Day, the results will be processed through the Electoral College system, and the Electoral College system consists of 538 electors. Now, the candidate who wins the majority of these electors wins. Now, the majority is 270 or more, so you'll see that everywhere, probably over the next week, the race to 270. And the way it works is typically, you know, and this is why I don't really get most of the complaint when it comes to the Electoral College system, but for each state, it's a winner-take-all system for 48 out of the 50 states. So what that means is that, let's say Trump here in Arizona gets majority of the popular vote. If he gets majority of the popular vote here in Arizona, then he takes all of the delegates with that state. So he wins the popular vote, all however many delegates go towards him, and he wins those delegates. So for example, in Florida, there's 30 Florida delegates, and he will win all 30 of those delegates if he wins, which he is going to win, which he'll win the popular vote for that. Now, I know this may be confusing for some because we've had instances such as Trump 1.0, which is when he ran the first time, where Trump lost the popular vote but still won the presidency. Now, the reason for that being is that, Trump was able to win key battleground states, and that's what we're really counting on this year as well. So the reason why Hillary Clinton in 2016 won the popular vote but lost the Electoral College was because of these major populous cities or cities and states such as California and New York, right? Hillary Clinton had a huge base there, had a huge turnout, and a lot of people that, voted for her in those areas specifically, and that was able to allow her to have the perception of winning, the election through the popular vote. But Trump was able to win and secure the popular vote in other key states that Hillary Clinton wasn't able to. And due to that, Trump was able to win. So, for example, Trump achieved his win of Hillary Clinton by getting 304 electoral votes, and Hillary Clinton had 227. Now, he did this by winning the popular vote in the Midwest and the Rust Belt, like states in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which historically leaned Democrat, but, he was able to secure those states and those popular votes and able to secure that. So that could be the case this time around. It's very rare, doesn't happen very often, but it's a winner-take-all system that we have. So, there's many swing states, key swing states, such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada. All those states are going to play a huge role in this election coming up. But like I said, 48 out of the 50 states all have this winner-take-all system. So it's not very complicated in that sense, because those 48 states, if Trump or Kamala Harris win the majority vote in that, then they take all the delegates, and that feeds into them having the 270 Electoral College votes, and first one to 270 will win. Now, what's going to happen after the election? So we should know the results very, 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 very quickly when it comes to knowing who won the presidency. Last year, it took, not last year, in the last election in 2020, we didn't know that Joe Biden won the election until Saturday. So that was an election week. However, in most cases, and what I believe will be the case this year, is we should have a very clear and distinct idea of who won the presidency by Wednesday, early Wednesday, and could even be by as early as Wednesday morning in and of itself. And so we could see a very, clear victory either way. But, we could have a long drawn out election like it has been for the, past election. But, that all just depends on how things shake out and how tight this race is and all the nuances and what it seems like with all these different things and these legal battles with, shutting down lines and things like that. It's safe to say that either way, there could be a lot of pushback on some things and could draw it out. Now, with that, after we know who's won, whether that's Kamala Harris or Trump, the certification of the electoral votes would take place on January 6th. And we'll have the joint session of Congress. And on January 6, 2025, the joint session will be held. And to formally count the electoral votes and certify the election results, the vice president, in their role as president of the Senate, presides over the session. And after counting the electoral votes, Congress will declare the official winner of the presidential election. Now, I just have this image in my mind, and it's so sweet to me. And I just hope, Kamala Harris is really in a tough situation. It can really go one of two ways with her. She's kind of in that Al Gore position, right? She can either win, and it can be her certifying herself as the victor. Or she could lose, and it could be this super, super sweet moment where she has to certify her own failure and solidify that image in America's mind of her losing. That would be great. We would love that. After the Electoral College votes are certified, there will be a transitional period. This transitional period takes place after the election. So right from November 5th to January 20th, we have this transitional period, and whoever Trump's or Harris team will work with the transition team, and they will work with the outgoing administration, try and find a smooth transfer of power, and they'll begin finding members, cabinet members, key advisors, and putting those things together. I feel like Trump already has a lot of that in place, and I'm assuming Kamala does. She has, obviously she's in the incumbent's administration right now. And during the same time, the newly elected Congress members will also start preparing for their roles and setting up their offices and getting ready for the new session. And then January 3rd, all of the new Congress will get sworn in on January 3rd, and they will be sworn in, and the new session of Congress will officially begin that day with leadership elections, such as Speaker of the House and all those things occurring. And so if the Republicans are able to maintain the majority in the House of Representatives, then safe to say, assuming Speaker Johnson might return, depending on how things are in the Republican Party, and if not, because of Republicans' ability to lose, we could see a shift and the Democrats could win the majority of the House. And it's really a toss-up either way. It's a very, very tight race, and that's why it's important for all Republicans and conservatives, if they care, to vote and get out to vote, not only for Trump, but also for the best potential candidate in their districts. Last but not least, to close out our timeline, January 20th, this president, Kamala Harris or Trump, will be sworn in. It'll be the inauguration day. And the president-elect and vice president will be sworn in, and the ceremony will take place on the Capitol in Washington, D.C. The president will take the oath of office. They will give their inaugural address, setting the tone for their administration and outlining a vision for the future. And that is what we can look forward to. So, with all that being said, kind of just trying to paint the picture of what we can expect over the course of this next week. There's going to be a lot of things thrown out there over the course of this next week, and it'll be interesting to see how things shake out. I'm optimistic because of the things we've covered today. I think that if there was a sense of security and a sense that this was in the bag and this was just a surefire win, I would, think that we would fail to see these key elements that we've seen here in the sense of panic, intimidation, and the rhetoric being turned up and trying to intimidate and fearmonger people into dissuading them from Trump. But that's exactly what we're seeing. And we're seeing Trump continue to make, capitalize on move after move, McDonald's, garbage man, all these great things. And I truly believe that, we could see another Trump presidency. Now, I don't want to jinx it. I don't really believe in jinxing, but, we shall see, is what I will end our episode with here. This will be our final episode until we know who the president of the United States is. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I want to thank you guys for, being a part of this journey and these first handful of episodes that we've created. I know we're new, we're still growing, but, it's been really sweet to have the privilege to cover a lot of these key stories and these key moments that are taking place. And I hope we can continue to do this. And whether that's under Trump or Harris, I promise I'm going to continue to bring great coverage of these things and great commentary. And we're going to continue to just cut through the commentary. And I know that regardless whether Harris or Trump gets elected, we still will have the wicked media to deal with and to cut through. And there will be battles to be fought. So, my fear in, my only hesitancy with a Trump election is the contempt that people might grow into. Now, what I mean by that is that people have a tendency to, when they've achieved victory or they achieve this goal, they become very nearsighted. They're not looking towards the future and not seeing what's ahead. And that's my concern. I really hope that, Republicans can figure it out, for lack of better words. They can figure out their crap and they can figure out how to move forward, because we've just seen a disaster heap of what the Republican Party is right now. They are not nearly as disciplined and together as the Democratic Party is. And if we have any chance at a future, we need to align together behind a common vision for the future. And we need to be able to focus on passing bills and getting key issues resolved during these next 4 years if Trump gets elected. And my worry is that, as we win this victory, people, Americans, everyday citizens may grow, just content with the idea of, content with the idea of being like, Trump's president and he's going to handle everything. No need to worry about, fighting the culture war or focusing on, battling in school boards and doing these things. There's still plenty of work that needs to be done every day, and we need to be living lives that are honoring to the Lord. and to live in your personal life as a conservative. The question I always ask myself is, what am I conserving and what am I preserving for my family and my children in my personal life? Am I seeking after God? Am I living a holy life? Am I living a life that I can be proud of? If I'm not doing any of those things but voting for Trump, what good does that do for the future of America? Because Trump's just one man. America is a culture. America is a nation made up of millions and millions of other people, and what makes up that nation is the people. So if the people are living in a unrighteous and degraded way, all that leads is to more unrighteousness and to the disintegration of our values as a country. So I hope that this victory is a good thing for America, but there could be a reality where it's one of those things where a victory means that we grow content and don't seek to better ourselves and keep pursuing victory. It's like when you score 100% or you do good on a test and you think that next time around you don't actually have to try. That's the worst thing that can happen for us. So I pray that that's not the case, and I hope that all of you have a great week. I will see you next week, and please, please, please vote. Get out there and vote. Search up online, find your nearest voting polls, find out how you can vote, where you can vote, do all those things. But just please, please, please make sure you vote. So that'll do it for this final episode before the presidential election. Thank you for watching and or listening. I hope you enjoyed, and don't forget to stay principled.